Hey, kids. Alright, let's talk about the Xbox Game Showcase. Happened Sunday, June 9th, 2024. Be yesterday, as of when I'm recording this, in the early AMs of Monday. Alright, I have 3 entire pages of notes in the big notebook. This is bigger than I used to see on my hockey videos. Anyway, because I was going to cover this like a proper games journalist, so I wrote down literally everything that happened and then realized it'd be way too long a video to go over everything. So I'm just going to kind of cherry pick. I already went through, kind of marked off what I want to talk about of what I took notes on. So, in chronological order, as in the order that things happened, because the order I took notes in as they happened. I covered it like a live event, kind of was. Even though you can watch it whenever. Anyway, let's get going. They start the showcase off with the Black Ops 6 campaign trailer, which I thought was an odd choice, if for only the reason that we already knew going into this they were going to have their own separate, like, Black Ops 6 developer direct with Treyarch and stuff. It was like 20 minutes. It was going to follow this. So I'm like, Like, it would make more sense to close the show on that, because then you can lead right into that thing. But hey, I know what they do close with, so it's fine. Because you always got these things start strong, finish strong. Like, your first thing you show is always going to be big, and so is the last thing you show is always going to be big. That's kind of the rule of thumb, and has been for these things, even since the days when E3 was still a thing, which is what this is sort of in place of for Microsoft for their presentation for whatever day it would have been for that weekend. You know, when E3 was still a thing. Now it's still, again, E3 is still a thing. It's happening right now. We just had Summer Games Fest before this, which I didn't cover because there wasn't a whole lot there I felt that I had much to say or talk about. So, this one, on the other hand, actually, honestly, full transparency, didn't honestly know if I was going to cover this showcase. I knew I was going to watch it and take some notes. I'm like, well, we'll see how much here is relevant that I could at least chime in on. And actually ended up being quite a bit, which is not surprising. All of these showcases that come up of the way we have E3 formatted now, where, and again, it was like this before when it was still E3, so whatever, I shouldn't even bother to delineate. But whenever Microsoft has their showcase, Sony's got theirs, Nintendo would have theirs. And actually, they were the first person to start this trend over a decade ago of like, we're going to do our own thing separate from E3, but it's not really here nor there. And now Nintendo does that multiple times a year, pretty much. And other companies have been getting on that too. This is not the first Xbox game showcase we've had this year, I don't think, even. Maybe it is. Yeah. Or I'm just getting things confused. I remember there being a big Starfield thing, like fairly a couple months out from launch. I remember not watching because it's like I already know enough on Starfield. We'll get to that in a second too, because there's news on that. So I should stop rambling. Let's get back to the actual show here. Not me talking about the nature of, the history of trade shows from the early '90s to present. since I've been paying attention to them, industry trade shows like E3. I'm not gonna go through the list. To be here up all day if I get on this topic. All right, back to anyway. They started the show with the Black Ops 6 campaign trailer, and I'm gonna include some information that was followed up on in the developer direct later on, which I actually didn't take any notes on, but I did watch out of pure curiosity. Story is set in the early '90s. So, and then they had mentioned like some tie-ins like Black Ops. There's obviously Call of Duty is not a franchise I've really gotten into or played much of since Modern Warfare 2, the original one back in like 2009. Like I know officially where I stopped with the series was Black Ops 2, and then I stopped caring. But the way things are now, the state of the Microsoft Activision acquisition, merger, takeover, whatever you want to call it. Acquisition would be the proper term now. A lot of us have been, some of us, I would be amongst this group of whatever the pie chart looks like, that would at least play the campaigns of these games if I had easier access to them through, say, Game Pass. Which is why when this deal was announced like 2 years ago, I was excited. So this is super, super duper consumer friendly for people like me that don't have a huge budget for gaming per se. Game Pass is great. I think that's a whole other video I could make too about Microsoft Game Pass and what a lovely thing it's been. And Sony's tried to sort of emulate that to lesser success. It's still, their programming system is still pretty good. Nintendo's the one that's still dragging their feet on this. The second they open they have a version of it, kind of, but it only applies to a lot of their classic games from NES, SNES, and then recently N64 era and Game Boy, and now Genesis because their deal with Sega. Like, they've got that, but it's not the same. Like, if you imagine a world where Nintendo had a Game Pass-like system where all of their first-party stuff is day and date with that subscription, come on, like, it would do so well. But because Nintendo's first-party stuff, like, gets released like twice a year. The big releases for them, it's not much. Anyway, I digress. Anyway, I said, let me go back. Yeah, the Black Ops 6 story being set in the early 90s and, interwoven, intertied with real history, to the point where in this one, in the campaign trail, they used real-life actual footage of George W. Bush and Bill Clinton, because, again, this is that time period right after the fall of the Soviet Union, Desert Storm era, like that, early 90s. And they said it's going to be reflected in the music, too. So here's hoping that they shelled out all of the money and there's a Nirvana track stuck in there somewhere. Be great, because it's used sparingly. They used was it something in the way? Because I know the Batman recently famously used that song in their trailers, and I swear as part of the actual theme. Those 3 opening notes to that, I think, are Batman's theme in that movie. But again, whole other video. We're going to be way off topic and way over time. I can tell already. I'm in a rambling mood because it's like 4 in the morning. I can't check the time. It's on my camera. Actually, I can't check it with the other thing. Not that it matters. It's 5 in the morning. So. Anyway, I just have a little window of good, it's quiet. I can get some good quality sound to record 2 very long videos. This one I didn't expect to be long. I didn't expect to ramble and go off on tangents, and we're on the very first of many, many topics to cover. Like I said, I'm going to throw in a bit of information from the developer direct that I didn't get time to touch on with just the, this is basically a showcase of trailers, essentially, for a bunch of stuff. And a lot of release date announcements, too. One other thing they talked about in the developer direct, not pertaining to the campaign per se, but just the actual game mechanics, and something new they're trying that I'm very interested in from, again, a game design, like a mechanics perspective too. Especially someone who plays a lot of first-person shooters, this seems like a very interesting idea and concept, and I want to see where they go with it and how it works, and practicality, not just on paper. They've been testing it for a while, so I'm assuming they're enjoying it. But it's something they're calling Omni Movement. Just basically that you can now sprint in any of the 4 main directions, which means you can also now dive and slide in those directions as well. Very cool concept, very interesting. Another thing they got in there too is part of the Omni Movement is that when you're prone now on that position, you have a 360-degree field of view with your gun. You can actually turn it around completely behind you. So, yeah. And you can technically also do that. Like, say, if you're sprinting and diving backwards, then you'll be in that prone animation. It could theoretically, the possibilities for stuff we're going to see probably in multiplayer, I'm assuming clip-wise, are going to be ridiculous. So I can't wait for some of that, even though I haven't been a Call of Duty fan in a long time. But yes, my hope for the franchise was renewed with the Microsoft acquisition. As I told a lot of people that a lot of my friends are Halo fans, so there's obviously that big divide between those two franchises. So there's a lot of poking fun at Call of Duty. Although we still play Warzone with Plunder's on rotation because my friends enjoy that mode. So it is what it is. And I have other friends that are huge into Call of Duty. So it seems like there is a weird line where you can't be into multiple big shooting franchises. I don't get that rule. It's sort of, this feels like a moment with the hockey guys. Like, what do you mean you can't cheer for multiple teams? I feel like I'm in that spot with this. Same comes with another genre, which I will touch on later in this. So, actually, yeah, let's try and move on. I've taken up now more time than Call of Duty took up with its trailer and almost with the showcase at the end, so I'll shut up because I went off on a couple different tangents there. Anyway, the news drop here, as far as I know, was the release date for Black Ops 6 was announced as October 25th this year, obviously. So, and the non-news, it would have been news if this wasn't included, that yes, it will be on Game Pass day one, as we all would expect. And yes, of course, there's still a $100 edition with a bunch of bells and whistles, if you care about that stuff, for your Call of Duties, for your fans. And hey, I get that. As someone who just recently purchased deluxe editions of the upcoming Warcraft expansion and the new Destiny 2 expansion, I can't really poke fun at people that are going to spend that much money on a game. I get it. If it's something you enjoy and put time into, and it's worth your money for that and worth it for the extra, I get it. I totally understand. So I'm not making fun of any of that. But hey, for someone like me, very much, I wouldn't even say a casual fan of the series. Just someone who's a gamer, I'm going to play it because it's relevant. It's sort of what it feels like. It's a relevant title that's coming out. I'm going to play it just for that. And again, I'm a guy who, even going back to, I'd say it was around Black Ops 2 is when they kind of lost me. I don't know if it was with the changes in multiplayer or changes in quality of the storytelling of the campaign. Probably a combination of both of those things. Because, that was where the last time I played any of the series. Seriously, I'm sure I've dabbled here and there. I know I have with friends recently, last year. Some friends of mine that are really big into Call of Duty. We got to play in a couple of just locally split screen messing around matches kind of thing. Anyway, let's move on from that. Although it is the biggest news from the showcase, because since then, brief time watching YouTube since the showcase, I've seen that Black Ops 6 campaign trailer about 3 times. Not in full, just pop up as an ad, which I'll skip because I've seen it. Anyway, it does look really interesting. I'm definitely playing the campaign. That whole Omni movement thing, what they're doing with that in multiplayer. Well, not multiplayer, that whole game, like campaign, multiplayer, zombies, which zombies is going back to being round-based like it used to be, so yay, because I got very annoyed. I forget which era this started in, but I remember when that started taking place, when they started making zombie mode, or the zombies mode in Call of Duty, like these ridiculously intricate series of puzzle rooms that had very obtuse, adventure game style, mechanics to solve. So basically, unless you went in with a guide or someone who knew what they were doing, you were just going to kind of wander around for hours and not have any clue how to progress the level. I didn't like it. A lot of people did like it. I think they're trying to maybe go for a hybrid of middle ground that makes both sides happy, although going back more towards, again, the wave-based system, like the original mode used to be, long time ago. Before some of the Call of Duty audience was even born, probably. Not actually, that's not that much of a joke, honestly. Because it started at World at War, which came out in like 2006 or 7. Anyway, off topic again. Enough time spent on Call of Duty. Moving on. The very next trailer they had up, I like the way these are presented. Generally, some people may not. It's similar as a movie trailer too, where it's like you might like here's the studio or here's a publisher, or developer involved. And that might be as close as you get to title cards. Not like, and now the trailer for this. They don't announce like you get that information confirmed at the end. That's what's the fun guessing game when you watch these things. You're like, what is this for? And this happened within the very next trailer that came out because it was a lot of like wide landscape shots of what looked like a lot of medieval / fantasy. I'm like, there's no way this is Elder Scrolls 6, which is the first thing that popped in my head. I'm like, no, it's way too soon. They're not going to show anything. Even like a brief cinematic teaser of pre-alpha build, like even then I would say pre-alpha footage would be blazing on the screen because developers would be very clear about that kind of stuff nowadays of what's cinematic, what's in-game engine, what's pre-alpha, alpha, beta footage, all that stuff. They're very, very careful to disclaimer-ish on a lot of this stuff, not with showcases, because of stuff that's happened in the past. I don't need to go over the stories. If you've been around the industry long enough, I've been around the industry for over 30 years at this point, so I've seen all of it. Anyway, as it turns out, no, that's not what's going on with this trailer, which I only thought for a half second. I'm like, the thing that threw me off, that also is part of throwing that off, is that title card they showed early on was just Bethesda. You didn't see id Software on there, just Bethesda. So that's another reason why I'm like, there's no way this is Elder Scrolls, but what else would it be? Bethesda. And then once you get to that, the second you see the armor and that cuts, I'm like, oh, it's New Doom, which is what it's in my notes. It's just New Doom because I don't know what it's called yet. I just know it's a New Doom game. And then I'm like, with Shield? Question mark, because you do see that pretty early on. Now you also have a shield that you're carrying around. And yeah, we got the title or as notes later, chronologically does not matter. Only looked at the trailer once, but yes, there's also giant mechs, or a mech you pilot at least once in that trailer, as well as some kind of flying mount you're using. All the craziness. If you played the 2016 Doom remake, really, reimagining, reboot of the series. And then the follow-up Doom Eternal, which I've yet to finish. I've played through like 70% of it. I need to go back, probably restart it, and then finish it. But yeah, this one's called The Dark Ages. So, Doom, The Dark Ages. Hence the kind of, it definitely has a more like medieval fantasy vibe to it. That's why in the early shots I was like, there's no way. It kind of looked, for a second there, I'm like, this isn't Elder Scrolls 6, is it? But no, it's Doom. It just sort of looks like if you took Doom and Elder Scrolls and they had a baby, that's what this would be. So that might get some people really excited. But again, less swords, probably still a chainsaw somewhere, I would imagine. Because their shield does have some like spikes, all like curved spikes around it, so that may serve as your chainsaw type function with the shield kind of thing. As a shield that's also a weapon, so we'll see. It's Doom, who knows? I'm sure it's going to be nuts and fun and amazing. That is coming out in 2025. Yeah. The closest I come to spoilers for this report here I'm doing on the showcase. If I mention a date and I don't specify the year, that means it's this year. Like I said earlier with Call of Duty, October 25th. Obviously, that's this year. If I say 2025, that's all we got. It's basically one of those two things. Either here's your date for this year, or sometimes we just got a nebulous still 2024. So we know it's still in the next 6 months, but Or 20, yeah, so I'll relay that as we go. But generally speaking, unless we got an exact date, things were kind of vague. Or sometimes no date. I'll get to that one. One of those upset me. Anyway, moving on. So again, cherry pick stuff I care about. And if you know the showcase by heart, you'll know exactly what I'm skipping over here. But don't take insults to the developers or anyone else. I actually played the first game in the series, just haven't followed up since then. Don't really care at the moment. I'm talking about State of Decay 3. The cinematic trailer for that. We all knew that was coming at some point. I played quite a bit of the first game, enjoyed it. Haven't really dipped myself back into it, but we'll see. I don't have a lot of time. Just mentioned that thing earlier about Warcraft and Destiny, so you can imagine where a lot of my time's going. That's only one of those games right now. We'll get to that one much later in the next video I record. Anyway, next on my list of things to talk about, we had a trailer for what clearly started crap. Gonna forget the character's name now totally, and I'm gonna feel like a dork. Like in the community we're all nerds and dorks, I feel stupid for not remembering a character's name from a video game franchise, because he's been in multiple games. Multiple Dragon Age games. The dwarf with the beard, his name. It's on the tip of my tongue, that's why I stuck it out there for y'all. Lambert? No. That name does sound familiar, I don't think that's who I'm talking about. Anyway. Trailer, recognize that character, and I start introducing other characters and classes and stuff like that. And even with a little bit of the art style on the font with the way that they're doing this trailer, I'm like, there's no way this is a Dreadwolf trailer, because this is an odd way to present that story, and it's not. That's why in my notes it's Dragon Age. I can tell it's Dragon Age, so that's already there, and it's ... like Dragon Age something. Like I don't think we saw any gameplay in this. It was purely either all cinematic or engine stuff. I wasn't sure. Probably cinematic, pre-rendered. But whatever that game is, which I'm actually curious to find out more about, because I like the Dragon Age universe. I've played all the games so far. Looking forward to Dreadwolf. Hoping we might hear something about that today, but honestly, that's, BioWare is not owned by anyone. They could drop Dreadwolf info whenever they want, probably on their own terms, since stuff's already leaked out, so they probably want to do it on their own at this point. But didn't know they had another project in development. This is something called the Veilguard, which is coming out fall of 2024, so the next couple months. And I'm sure since that trailer came out, they've released more information about what that game is. Based on all the characters and stuff, the introduction, the way that trailer was styled, I don't suspect it's going to be a typical Dragon Age game. It's probably going to be some other genre, a little more actiony, more arcadey, a little more casual. That's, I'm not the best choice of words there. People could take that the wrong way, but I think most of you understand what I'm kind of trying to get at. Because it helps if you've watched the showcase and you're watching this, but maybe you haven't. So who knows? I'm trying to help cover this like I would normally cover anything. So anyway, well, not really, because if I was actually doing this properly, I would have retaken that first 5 minutes of the entire video and redone it. There's my professionalism. Anyway, let's move on, and this will explain why I chose this for some wardrobe. Because we got our first look, finally. Feels like it's been forever on this one, even though it's only been, well, actually, yeah, it's been like 8-9 months, so. Because Starfield did release in November, it's June, I can do the math. Alright. We got our first look at the Shattered Space expansion, which, if, again, in my case, Starfield, I would have played anyway, because I typically like Bethesda games of those style. I like Bethesda games that generally aren't Elder Scrolls. Well, that aren't Skyrim at least. I liked Oblivion a lot, but anyway, that's whole other video. When we get closer to 6, we can start talking about my personal history with the Elder Scrolls games. But the other Bethesda stuff, your your Fallouts, and your Starfield now, and what else did they use that engine for? Like, I guess, yeah, Skyrim or Elder Scrolls. Huh. Thinking there was something else they had in their lineup that I enjoyed. I can't remember what it was. Huh. I'm sure that I probably just having a complete brain fart. Anyway, Starfield expansion, awesome. They shadow drop like, hey, new content tonight for some stuff. It's minor stuff, not enough to make me re-download the game again. Oh, that's why I brought that up, because I previously mentioned earlier about the Game Pass is great, and people will still spend money if they care. I was sold on Starfield the second they showed anything or even announced it. Really, it's like, yeah, we're gonna do like, a Bethesda game like Fallout but with science fiction, space, and our own universe, and we're gonna start this new IP. I'm down for all of this. Sold. And I kind of went dark on the game after that. Like, I know they did a several like developer directs leading up to it to show off features and talk about stuff. I didn't watch any of those. Nope. Didn't want to or need to. I wanted to go into that game and be surprised by stuff. Which is probably why I enjoyed Starfield a lot more than it seems the critical community did, or maybe the gaming community at large. It seems like there was a lot of negativity and backlash towards Starfield. And I saw the criticisms. I understand where people are coming from. I just don't have those same opinions. A lot of things that bothered people in that game did not bother me. I was super happy. Spent like well over 100 hours in that. Because it was on Game Pass. I'm already paying a subscription to access it. They did offer, I thought this was a cool thing, as opposed to buying like the crazy deluxe edition. You got Game Pass, you can just spend $30 to upgrade to that deluxe edition, which includes this first expansion. And I'm like, well, I know how much expansion DLC prices are. That's worth it alone. Plus, they had the nice caveat of that 3 days early access to Starfield. I'm like, yes. Like, just let me play it sooner, because I've been waiting for this since they announced it, basically. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And it was, and I really enjoy it. So yes, I'm looking forward to jumping back into that for this expansion, which is, they did give us a date of 2024. So it's this year sometime. I imagine it'll probably be around the end of the year, just because I know there ended up being a lot more. Well, it's a Bethesda game. They kind of expected there to be problems and bugs. Although, to be fair, Starfield bug-wise runs better than any Bethesda game did at launch or for the first few months, because they always have to heavily patch it. And there's always still things people keep finding, even though they've definitely improved that engine, overhauled it for Starfield. It still has its fun quirks. But yeah, I did an awesome note here. Some of the visuals in Shattered Space kind of reminded me a little bit of Destiny, particularly the final shape. There was another game or two in this showcase that did that. And I'm not sure if that's just purely coincidence or probably has more to do with that. Well, I've been playing a lot of Destiny Final Shape lately. And to be fair, without going into too much on that, that's going to be its own video that I'm recording after this, so I don't lose my voice, hopefully. I don't lose my voice talking for an hour here. Hopefully it won't go that long. Speed this up a little bit. Get on less tangents. By doing so, I'll forget what I'm talking about, like I just did. I know it's talking about Destiny, something related to... Oh! Yeah, because Final Shape, you kind of get... Without going into too much on that, and just saying one thing, and Destiny's new expansion, Final Shape, you kind of get a little bit of everything, art style wise, that the game has ever thrown at you previously, and also some new stuff. So maybe that's why when I look at everything looks like Destiny to me right now, but that's probably because I'm playing a lot of it too. So there's, the cause and effect there may be reversed. But anyway, it's very excited to see that finally get announced, because I've been kind of casually wondering, like, Starfield's been out for a while now. Where's that expansion that I paid for? Nothing. That's fine. I need to get back into that game anyway. 'Cause I started the New Game Plus, which I'm not going to spoil anything with Starfield. Don't worry about the spoilers there. But one thing I did say to a couple people as me and a couple other friends were playing through it, various paces. I think I was the first one to actually crack the ending and all that. And I wasn't rushing it. I did a bunch of side quests. Actually, I think I did literally everything I could till I ran out of stuff to do except story. At the ending there, because I knew I was getting close to the end. It's like, okay, well, then we go catch up on side quests now, because I've been doing them along the way. I'm not gonna get into it again. We're a half hour, and I'm still on my first page, and I like my fourth note. So let's bump this along. Yes, Starfield, cool. Some new content. The one note I should add about the new content, even though I don't care so much about it, I know there's a whole community of people this is a big deal for. I don't know if it's applying to only the PC version. I assume so. They're allowing the creator stuff in there now. I think they've got stuff featured from the. I mean, I know it's been there. I think I don't play Starfield on PC. Console guy generally. I do have a PC that can actually run games now, which is nice. But generally speaking, console. So not sure because they kind of tried that experiment once to bring like the Bethesda modding community into the console world, and didn't really quite work. I don't remember why, but yeah, it'll happen again. Give it time. We'll see it. Because I have to look at the trailers again. Even the menu in the show might have been on console for some of the user created content, downloadable I don't know if they call it workshop like they used to in Fallout. I think it's called something different in Starfield. Either way, they're adding some of that, and there was something else. Again, it was a minor update that they were dropping again tonight or last night as of the show. So, it's always fun. People do that. I always like it. So, speaking of which, minor note here for the next game. Actually, a game I haven't played yet, but I've very strong interest in playing, and it's also tied into what we were talking about because it's Bethesda. The new Fallout 76 expansion coming out, Skyline Valley, due out June 12th, so a couple of days from now. So yeah, that's cool. I've been wanting to check out Fallout 76 for a while now, especially since the TV series on Amazon got started up, which I generally feel like I've heard good things about. I think. I don't think I've heard bad things either. I don't think I've heard much actually about the Fallout TV series. So I do want to watch it though. I think what very tiny bits I did see bits and pieces of seems like people that enjoy the games are like, yeah, this is good. So cool. And if you're a regular Fallout 76 player, you'll care about this next news. As part of that expansion announcement, they announced they're going to have playable ghouls next year in 2025. So that's cool. I don't know how many selectable races there are or could be besides humans and mutants. I'm surprised ghouls weren't already in the game, but I know Fallout 76 has had major problems since launch, but like many games that are live service games that kind of launch iffy, they tend to improve over time. A lot. There's many examples I can think of. I'm not going to start naming them all off because this has been done several times over in the industry at this point. In terms of company, like a live service game releasing and then having to kind of eventually reinvent itself to some degrees, smaller. But the most dramatic example we saw of this, I think, was with Final Fantasy XIV in the last several years when they basically literally rebooted the entire game. The part where they changed the name, I think, to Final Fantasy XIV Realm Reborn or something like that is the official title now. Because they basically... And there's an in-lore, I think, in-universe explanation for this, too, which I would be fascinated to look into. I know one friend of mine got way into it. We didn't really talk about it, though. He just mentioned that I wish I started playing this sooner. And so I feel a lot about Destiny, even though I was there day one. I missed a lot. I've been in and out. I've dipped in and out of Destiny since it started, so... that's what I told him. I wish I'd been more consistent with that. And that's still true to this day, but we'll get to that again in a separate video. I'll tease at the very end of this one. Yep, take a drink of something. Sorry, I've been talking for a half hour. How I get an hour one of these one day without drinking is beyond me. Alright. I don't mean booze, I mean, like, just, anyway. So that happened. The one smaller-ish, I don't really know how big the studios are behind it, game I have marked to actually talk about, I'm going to skip a lot of those. There was a world premiere of a game called Expedition 33, just coming out in 2025. I only noted it because it looks like a traditional action RPG, or possibly action JRPG, I'm not sure. Where, yeah, like, I know you can consider your Dark Souls and Souls-likes games are technically action RPGs by definition of the genre. Yes. I'm talking, again, kind of old school action RPG, like Super Mario RPG, which is still kind of, I guess, a blend of turn-based and sort of, it's semi, I don't know, there's a term for it somewhere, where you actually have, button combos and button counters and timing and all that matters with stuff. I could see that in the UI in the trailer. That's what caught my attention more so than anything with the game. I'm like, oh, like this is like an old what I consider old school, at least action RPG, because that's what they all used to be like. So I'm like, that's neat. So hence I've noted that for that reason alone. So shout out to a smaller game there. Wouldn't necessarily get as much hype, but because yes, there's stuff in here. Eventually, I'll get to a whole bunch of smaller games I skip. Well, again, I'm not even mentioning what I skip because then whatever. It's the internet. You're gonna get offended anyway. Who cares? Like for example, skipping that. Reasons, animation frame rates, but whatever. That's why I chose to skip some of this stuff, because like there's stuff that I would talk about. Really, my only comment would be a negative one, so just not even bother. Enough of that in the world. Let's focus on the positive things that I really enjoyed in the showcase. Actually, the next one, because my next note, the next thing we saw, I'm like, World of Warcraft trailer. I'm like, yeah, I know that Microsoft owns Blizzard. Interesting choice still, but okay. I get it. It's your new expansion for World of Warcraft. You're gonna promote it. Makes sense. Because I know they had just dropped a new trailer for that. I think a couple of days ago. The new World of Warcraft expansion is called the War Within. It's due out later this year. I know that because I just recently got back into playing World of Warcraft after a very, very long absence. Not going to go into it now. Separate video. And one of the things I noticed when purchasing the new expansion, it doesn't have a release date. All they said in the fine print on the Blizzard, this is very Blizzard of them. Because one of the perks you got from the deluxe super edition and whatnot was 3 days early access to the release. I don't know if it's 3 days, maybe just according to the Starfield thing. Either way, early access to the release. And there was no release date set yet. So in the fine print, it just says that release date will be before December 31st, 2024. Which, again, feels very Blizzard, is almost a joke. It's like, it'll be out before the end of the year, we promise. And then, of course, all terms subject to change, which I didn't see listed, but I know it's there. It's in every legal contract. But I thought it was funny. And yes, this is significant because, and apparently I found this out afterwards, just kind of browsing some of the internets. I guess that, because I was assuming this is like, oh, this must be the new trailer they released a couple of days ago. They're just throwing it in the showcase here. Oh, they had one additional piece of information to drop on that, which was the release date, which is a big deal because we didn't know. I know the beta test, I think it's technically still a closed beta test for people that are either registered for that program within Blizzard or people that pre-ordered the Super Deluxe Edition. Like not Super Deluxe with statues and that, just the digital deluxe with stupid in-game things. And again, early access plus beta access for the closed or for the beta. I don't think Blizzard really delineates between closed and public betas. I'm sure that they do internally, but I think publicly facing they just refer to them as the betas. So those would be the public beta or semi-public beta. sure you have your journalists or influencers, again, people part of the actual like beta test program that have signed up for it with Blizzard, which I've done in the past too, for certain things. Also for Microsoft for the Xbox Insider program for a bit. Eventually, recently got out of that just because one of the Halo Infinite updates totally messed. I had to factory reset my Series X to fix the issue that got caused. I didn't break my system; it just broke Halo. But that's neither here nor there. Updates are fun. Anyway, so yeah, I guess that was news. Is the point I was getting at. I didn't realize that the World of Warcraft community had seen the new trailer, but there was no date attached to it. There was on this one, so that was the big news that they dropped, was the release date, which is August 26th. So that's coming up in a few months. And that's earlier than I expected. I know because I was talking to someone about this, as I was talking about possibly considering getting that deluxe edition, which I couldn't really afford, but, you know, it's a long story. And I was like, yeah, I was talking about it, like, yeah, it's like, they're just open, like, the beta's just gonna be starting, like, this, I think it just started this past week. Or it's coming up this week. It's very early in June, I forget the date when it starts. I think it's already going, but, it's like, yeah, they'll probably, this is a big expansion for them, I mean, they all are, but, so yeah, they'll probably beta test, I would imagine, like throughout the summer, and then we'll get like a fall release date. That would make sense to me. But yeah, no, August 26th. So, and since they waited so long to announce that date, like we're real close from like they announced that in early June. That's 2 months out. So, all right, we'll see. I will be there to cover that expansion. So. It's gonna be fun times. Oh, another important thing to note. I actually had to go back this morning before I start this video up, or this recording. That's been going on forever now. Jeez. All right. Anyway, no, I did look this up because I was curious. Because again, I'm taking all these notes here in real time as the show is happening. Not really taking advantage of that pause feature because I'm treating this sort of like a live sporting event because it kind of is for gamers anyway, or more, well, sort of. It's a something, but where was I at with that particular thing? Oh no, I was saying as I'm writing all these things down in real time, I would occasionally miss very tiny pieces of information. Usually they weren't that relevant stuff, but in this case I was like, huh. Well, it's because something happens later in the show we'll get to, and this is why I had to go back and double check that World of Warcraft War Within trailer. Because nowhere before or after on that does it say anything about Game Pass. Because this was something that I knew has been speculated about since they announced the acquisition of Blizzard. Like, okay, well, we get that all the Call of Duty stuff, yeah, that's all gonna come to Game Pass, and you'll keep the Battle Pass system in place probably, like, why mess with that, and you got your microtransactions, you're good. Warcraft's not really any different. It doesn't run on a Battle Pass per se, which I think may be the issue. I think they're still probably trying to figure out the best course of action there. But yeah, I was a little surprised. That's why I went to double check it, just to confirm if it was there or not, and it's not. As of right now, this, again, subject to change, I guess, in the next few months, but as of right now, know that the War Within, the new World of Warcraft expansion, is not releasing on Game Pass. I know it's a PC-only release, and you still would have your monthly subscription model in place, but the base game itself, you could include that cost in the Game Pass. It can't be, makes me curious about sort of what some of the numbers look like at Blizzard for that. Like, there's no way actual sales of expansion are that much of their revenue. It's got to be majority subscription, supplemented by, if not even majority anymore, they still have microtransactions. You can, not even micro, you can buy $20 amounts in that game. I know, I own a couple of them. I'm not ashamed of that either. They're awesome. They remind me of, it's fun. I still had that account. I just recently got back logged into it. I don't have any of the characters. Well, they aren't. I went to a new server, start with new things. I missed a lot of World of Warcraft. Again, separate video, different time. I'll talk about that. But, yeah. Something I was going to say. Again, losing my train of thought. We're all over the place here, and this is already 45 minutes. I'm still on page 1 of my notes. We gotta speed this up. The reason I didn't cover everything was so I didn't do this for every single game. Which I'm still not. I'm still skipping games. Although at this point I'm not skipping games, because right after that World of Warcraft trailer, it's like they made this moment of these couple things together just for me, almost. Oh, we got some more Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta. We got some more Metal Gear trailer looking. Looks like more, this one I think, I don't know if they said it, I think they did say up front that it was all in-engine. Which doesn't surprise me because it's Unreal Engine 7, I believe. I know when they, or 7.2, I think they're on, whatever they're on now. I know before they announced the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, Unreal themselves put out like a tech demo, visual demo of what the engine could do, and a lot of that demo was set in the jungle. And I showed that, I sent that clip of that demo to a friend of mine. I was like, man, that Metal Gear Solid 3 remake better be in an Unreal, like in this engine, because like to see what this looks like, that's what the game, like, please do that. And that's what it looks like what they're doing, because man, what they showed off, it does look almost like it's pre-rendered. I know it's not though, that's just running in game. This is why we have to delineate now, is even smart people like me that know visuals really well and know what in-game engine and pre-rendered look like, usually pretty easily. Sometimes some stuff's blurring that line now. I think some games of this showcase did that. That could also be the fact that I was watching this stream in 1080 and it's YouTube compressed. So yeah, hard to say without actually playing it in 4K. So there's a difference there visually. So, but that's something you really need to. I can't judge that over YouTube. Anyway, we'll move past the Sea of Thieves expansion, which I used to play for a bit with some friends, but not really a big deal. All right, stuff I'm skipping. Oh, this one's fun. I wonder how I want to even talk about this. Screw it. I'll do it the easy way. It's gonna make me sound elitist and whatever else. I don't really care. This was a fun moment for me in the showcase because we got a new Perfect Dark game. Not just announcement, like for the worst kept secret in the industry. We all know Microsoft's been working on this for years, to the point where the game I think has gotten rebuilt and scrapped multiple times. You know, that kind of thing. Because we knew it was in development. They wouldn't officially say that. We knew they were making. I don't think at least. Maybe they did officially comment like, "Yeah, we're working on it," but it's a ways off. This was years ago. Finally, we saw not just an announcement trailer, which would have been one thing, or a teaser or something. No, we saw a bunch of gameplay. A bunch. You can tell because all the first-person UI is there. And again, they slow rolled the reveal, because nowhere up front does it say Rareware, even though, because Microsoft owns that company. I don't have to give them credit, even though it's their IP. It's all on Microsoft. So I think trailer just started with a, generic Microsoft Game Studios thing, I think. And the two main developers that are working on it. I believe there are at one point there were 4 developers working on this. Probably too many cooks in the kitchen. There's a reason this game has been taking this long to get anything on, because it's been up, down. So, Anyway, I called it from the footage before it's even, or in the, not footage, because it is footage actually. It's quite a bit of gameplay, somewhat cut together, and you do get one couple more extended sequences. They're not necessarily game or in-game cinematics. They might be though. They're the kind where it's like you're still in your first-person view. You're hearing someone talk over a radio or computers from other. Still cinematics, just you still have that freedom of move. That thing. But yeah, I noticed watching the trailer, both on the UI and in the dialogue, they're mentioning something about Carrington. And I'm like, Carrington, why does that name sound so familiar to me? And I did something kind of similar to that, where I closed my eyes for a little more than a half second, just trying to kind of think, Carrington, where do I know that name from? And then as I did that slow blink, I opened and looked back at the screen, what's going on in game. Because again, we have UI and stuff and everything going on. And we see the character holding up a device in the left hand. And in the very corner of that device, you have the old school Perfect Dark logo, if you know what it looks like, with the little D or the P and the D kind of. If you know what it is, it's iconic. Can't miss it. And that's when it clicked. I'm like, yeah, Carrington Institute. This is Perfect Dark. And I got very excited. Just because, again, this is Perfect Dark. I don't want to say, well, because yeah, obviously, yes, there's a moment throughout the game, in that gameplay, wherever they're showing off, where yeah, they do refer to her as Agent Dark. That's, I guess, supposed to be somewhat your reveal moment for people not really familiar with that game. That's why when I saw that name Carrington, I'm like, I know that from someone. That's Perfect Dark. Very big Perfect Dark. Very much. Much Doge. But yeah. They did obviously confirm that at the end with the title screen. And no, it's not like Perfect Dark 3 or -1. Because, yeah, we had Perfect Dark Zero. Again, it's technically a franchise because of Perfect Dark Zero, because there was a second game that I want to say no one cared about, but I do know someone that managed to sit there and grind out all of the achievements in Perfect Dark Zero on principle. That person was me. That was actually one of the very first Xbox 360 games that I got all the achievements in, because that was one of the very first Xbox 360 games that was out, and all those games started having achievements. So, yeah, even though obviously Perfect Dark Zero does not hold a candle to the original and what it means to those of us that grew up playing it, in the late 90s, early 2000s, pre-Halo, that gap. Our landmark moments in shooting games: Doom, GoldenEye / Perfect Dark, and then Halo. That's sort of the timeline. Other people would argue what's happened since then. I'm not going to get into recent stuff. Anyway, it does look like, and this is a total guess on my part, so just take this as my speculation with all salt. Not even grains of it, just maybe gallons, possibly. It looks to me, I only watched that gameplay trailer once live during the show. I need to look back at it again and some breakdown of it. It looks to me like they're definitely trying to include some more stealth elements in the game, which makes sense. For the character, for that universe. It's never really a thing in the original game. Kind of. There was, again, it was sort of like you had the options at the time to sort of be semi-stealthy. This looks like it's not going full-blown stealth game. It is still a first-person shooter, but obviously a lot of that was cool about Perfect Dark, and what sort of not separated but built on the James Bond formula was, of course, your little gadgets and gizmos and technology stuff that you have. And Perfect Dark, I'm not going to spoil the story because it looks like to me the reboot, this is a fresh reboot of the story itself. Or again, I want to say the franchise because technically it's a franchise, sort of. In a weird way, I think even Perfect Dark Zero didn't exist, would still consider Perfect Dark a franchise because it's its own IP that's technically not James Bond. And it's very not, by the way. Not just because it's a female protagonist either. If you don't know the story, I'm not going to spoil it. It's hinted at in this trailer, but they don't really spoil it. They hint there's something more going on in this world besides just the spy stuff. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. It's hinted at in the new trailer, so it is what it is. Anyway, the reason I'm led to believe this is a full reboot in terms of like reboot for reals is there's a line in that trailer where Carrington is talking to Agent Dark. I'm assuming it's still Joanna Dark. I don't know why they would change her name. And and he talks about wanting to recruit her. So I'm like, okay, well, I know you're not remaking Perfect Dark Zero, and I don't remember the plot of that game at all. Despite having all the achievements, that was mostly grinding multiplayer stuff anyway. So I did beat the game on the hardest difficulty, but when you are dedicated and have time, like I did back in my early 20s, that was fine. Even when it wasn't necessarily a good game, just play through the difficulties, escalating, like go through normal, hard, then you're still like that back to back. It's not that bad, trust me. Pro tip on whatever. Anyway, I'll shut up now. Yeah, I did call that this is Perfect Dark before they officially revealed it, or even unofficially with the dropping the Agent Dark thing. I got it from the Carrington. And again, if you know the franchise, saw a little marking on her little PDA thing. That is 1000% Perfect Dark. That's the logo, the little miniaturized one, and then of course, obviously, Carrington Institute, blah blah blah. If you know the game, it's like, oh yeah, all this clicks. But the only bummer there is no date at all. Not even a 2025 date, which I mean, Christmas 2025 seems reasonable, but it may not be that far along in development. I don't think they would show gameplay with UI and not have pre-alpha footage splashed over it. So I don't know. I don't know why they're not announcing even a window to give us an idea. Maybe it is still very early days, and they don't want to say that it's even like alpha state. It looked fairly polished from what we saw, but of course it is. That's the presentation. It's going to be that. So either way, that was very cool, very unexpected. It feels like that new Perfect Dark game that's been in development for seemingly forever has almost become. It didn't quite get to Half-Life 3 status, but it was getting close. So like, is it ever gonna come out? Exist? One of these days? Or like GTA 6, which did finally get announced. Not during this showcase, obviously. That was months and months ago. But yeah, so it happened finally. New Perfect Dark is officially coming, and we've got footage of what that game's going to look like, unless they cancel it between now and then. Which isn't, well, no, that's actually probably not possible, just because sunk cost fallacy that I'm sure they're looking at. They've spent years and put who knows how much money into probably different developers and coming up with something that looks good, and then deciding to scrap it and start over, which is what I've been hearing has been happening with this game and why it's taken so long. So anyway, can't quite read the notes. Anyway, it doesn't matter on that one. It's just something follow up my Perfect Dark. I'm sure I just said anyway. All right, before we get to the next thing, I'm going to pause very briefly because we're almost at the hour mark. Apologize, not realize it would take this long. It's gonna be a long day uploading because I know the next video I'm doing is probably gonna be this long too. Maybe not. Maybe I'll get these things reversed. Anyway, quick little pause here, and I'll be right back. And we're back. All right. Sorry for the short delay. Well, for you it's instant. So anyway, before I move on, I want to jump back to Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta. Thing I didn't mention in that, because again, nothing. I mean, new. It was all new footage they showed us. But if you're as familiar with that game as I am, I know where all these moments are from. There wasn't anything that was like, well, that shouldn't be in the game or anything like that. The only thing about that trailer, they didn't give us a release window or date, which surprised me quite a bit, just because. I mean, it's been rumored in development for a while, but based on what they rolled out in terms of trailers, like with the teaser and then the other trailer and now this one, they're slow rolling things for sure, which kind of makes me suspect development may have started more recently. Especially if it's running on the new Unreal Engine, it's got to be they could have had it in the older engine and probably easily transported I'm sure Unreal's, there's a reason why like the entire Halo franchise is going over to it. It's just a standardized platform. It's easier to work with than a custom engine. So anyway, I did want to mention there's no release date for that. I imagine it's going to be 2025 though. I would say holiday window 2025. Why do I say that? It happens on the Japanese calendar. 2025 is the year of the snake, much like 2001 was when they released Metal Gear Solid 2. And I think there's another game in the middle somewhere that also released during the year of the snake on the Japanese calendar. So that'd be my hunch. We still don't know when the Master Collection Volume 2 is coming, so I would assume that would come out before Delta, Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta does, but who knows at this point. It was cool to see more of the game, but I really would just like the idea of when we're going to actually get to play it. So a release window there would have been nice. And I got reminded of that because I was looking ahead of the next game, or in this case, expansion, which did drop a release date. So yay. Anyway, that expansion will be for Diablo 4. And that is the Vessel of Hatred, which they did mention is coming to Game Pass. So cool. Because I believe, yeah. We don't always get that. Usually Game Pass will give you the base game. If there's expansion DLC stuff later, that's almost never included in Game Pass. So awesome. More of what I want to see from the Blizzard buying Activision, or Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard, is this kind of stuff. Like including the Diablo 4 expansion in Game Pass. Awesome. So yeah, they showed the opening like cinematic cutscene for the expansion, which is someone who has not yet finished Diablo 4. I have no context for any of the stuff going on there. Yeah, I just really recently picked it up with it being added to Game Pass, which I knew was inevitable. I got very close to buying it, but I'm like, I know that merger's going through, or acquisition's going through. If I just wait and be patient, which kind of sucks. I had a lot of friends playing it at launch I could have played with, but it is what it is. I'm sure I'll be caught up by the time the expansion releases. So. Oh, which, by the way, yes. Release date for that expansion is October 8th. So, a couple months after the World of Warcraft expansion. So, for you Blizzard fans like myself, there you go. Yeah, I still got a lot of catching up to do. I'm through the prologue. I don't think I've done the first act has got 3 or whatever missions to it, like stories. I haven't even touched one of those. I've been so distracted with just the side questing. Like, I'm a level 30-something Necromancer in the current season. Because I think they said they changed it. I hope they did anyway. I know they did in World of Warcraft. Where your seasonal characters aren't just, like, gone after the season. They just transfer over regular characters after that. So, there's no reason to not play a seasonal character now with that stuff. And because they introduced, like, a battle pass system in Diablo. Which actually kind of works shockingly well. Like, I normally am not really a fan of those systems, unless it's a game I really enjoy. Like, I'll buy into it for Halo, and I'll buy into it for Diablo. There you go. Alright. Got my money twice, Blizzard, or Microsoft in this case, because 343, Halo, whatever. Anyway, more than twice. I didn't even pay for Halo Infinite, because it was on Game Pass. And multiplayer is free anyway. So I paid for the I'm paying monthly for the campaign still. Not monthly, but you know what I mean. There's various ways to pay for Game Pass. So, anyway, in terms of how often you pay on it and stuff. But anyway, next up, after the Diablo cinematic trailer and release date announcement, and the Game Pass, and the announcement that was going to be on Game Pass, that was pretty big too. That's why I had to go back this morning before this video and double check that World of Warcraft thing, because I'm like, is that going to be on Game Pass? No? Okay, weird choice. Like, that's not Diablo expansion is. World of Warcraft expansion? No. I have no idea why that is. I'd be very curious to hear from someone at Microsoft or Blizzard about some of those decisions. Not that they're bad, I'm just curious as to why one, not the other kind of thing. Yeah, not throwing shade at them. I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm just curious as to why. But anyway, moving on. Next thing we got was a trailer for Fable. I have Fable 4 is in parentheses because that's what we're all going to probably call it, even though they're just calling it Fable. It's like a rebranding and relaunch of the franchise. I don't know why they're bothering to do that, but maybe it'll make sense when we actually play the game. I think they said it's much like the last Fable trailer, all in-game cinematic, or all in-game, either in-engine or in-engine cinematic, or something. I don't know what it was. Either way, it seemed like more of a story trailer, but completely different from the other trailer we got, which I couldn't really make sense of, like, what they were trying to do with the story and how, or the presentation of that story. More other that first trailer felt like. This one felt more like, I think we saw some gameplay, even though there was no UI, so it's always hard to tell. But yeah, more Fable stuff. So again, that's another game where it's like, I don't need to see trailers. Just give me a date. I know it's going to be on Game Pass, so I don't really paying for it. Really, just give me a release date and it's good. I don't care. I've been a fan of that series since the original. Not a huge fan. I have a friend of mine that really loves the Fable franchise. Like, we'll replay them multiple times, or every couple of years. But yeah, so I'm not that big into it. I've played them all, enjoy them all. So looking forward to running back or going back into that world of Albion. For whatever story they're telling, I don't really care. I just want to play it. See what I'm more curious, like, what the new gameplay systems are. That's a side of it I would want to see more on, but I think we're still a ways off of that, considering. Oh no, they did put a date on that one of 2025, so that was significant for that alone. Is that okay? It's coming out next year. Probably their big holiday release. Could also be their big summer release too. The industry doesn't really work the way it used to. You're not necessarily tied to that holiday window as much as you used to be, or even the summer window. Big games at this point now can release whenever. Elden Ring came out in February last year, so it's still one game a year. Just saying. The release timing is not what it used to be, industry-wise. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff I'm going to skip, because it's like I knew I'd be over on time already. Like I'm psychic. Yeah, actually, yep, okay. Because I used Sharpie like a smart person to mark things I want to talk about and bled through pages, so I have to double check things. Anyway, next up, we got another long anticipated announcement trailer for a game that had been announced and confirmed. We knew this was happening. That Microsoft had the exclusive rights to a new Indiana Jones game. That's pretty much all we knew. I think we knew the developer attached to it, who I forget completely. There's a name I want to say, but I don't want to say the wrong name, because that would be worse, so I'm just going to shut up and talk about the trailer. They showed a lot of this. Like, a good chunk of the trailer, I think, was like an entire cutscene or close to it. So, and not even intro. Like, it's probably early in the game, I'm assuming still. But wow, they showed a lot of stuff in general. I think a lot more than I think any of us expected. An announcement trailer with a little bit of footage probably would have been good, and like a couple of lines from Indy would have been great. Speaking of that, though. And I want to investigate this further. I'm sure other people are already doing so and asking questions, because I know I have questions. What's going on with Indiana Jones' voice in this trailer? And not in a bad way. Like, it doesn't sound off. That's the thing. It sounds exactly like young Harrison Ford Indiana Jones. Which leads me to ask questions. Did you get a voice double who is just really good at sounding like that era Harrison Ford? Did you somehow use all the Microsoft money to hire Harrison Ford? Then, because his voice does sound a little different now. He's obviously decades and decades older. If you've seen the newer it's not a good sign. I can't tell you the name of it because I had the name of the game here in front of me. It's not helping my brain. Yeah, the new one with Mads Mikkelsen and Phoebe Waller-Bridge from Fleabag. Crap. Dial of Destiny. That's it. Yeah. My point being, older Harrison Ford does not sound the same as younger Harrison Ford. There's a slight difference there. So they could do, like I said, that's why, again, option A, they hire a really good voice double that sounds exactly like young Harrison Ford. Option A, probably most likely because it's the cheapest. Option B is the least likely because it's the most expensive, which is they actually hire Harrison Ford to record a lot of dialogue and then use some software to kind of tweak it and pitch it so it sounds exactly like young Harrison Ford. They did something similar with the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian. Spoilers with Mark Hamill. They had him come in and do the performance, do the voice lines, and then they tweaked those voice lines later in post, so to make him sound younger, more of that age, as opposed to how he sounds when he's older, because your voice does change as you age. This is a commonly known fact. It actually happens all throughout your life. 2 major periods, you have one voice until about puberty, then you've got a voice until you get older. I don't know when that older sets in, there's no real time limit, but you know what I'm talking about. And this applies to everyone. I don't think it's just even the sound of their voice, but the way they talk. I doubt I'll still have this much energy when I'm that old, if I ever live to be that old, because I'll, it's the whole burnout, fade away thingy. Not getting there. Anyway, enough with the Indian. Sorry. Before I get off topic, we either have someone doubling the voice really good, either they spent all the money to pay Harrison Ford to do it and then just tweaked it, or option B, which is the most tricky and kind of controversial, which would be that there's enough recordings of Harrison Ford, young Harrison Ford, through both audio, like dialogue he's done in films and interviews, because he's a huge, massive star. He's always doing interviews. You could feed a ridiculous amount of hours into a machine learning tool. I'm not using the letters, because it's not what it really is. That's a whole other video. I'll rant for like 2 hours about that. Anyway, so you could do it with a machine learning tool, potentially. So yes, it could be AI generated. I hate saying that because it's not true AI, but just that way my point gets across of what I'm trying to communicate without dancing around it. And my pet peeve of calling that stuff AI is insulting to a science fiction fan. So anyway, I don't know what's going on there with the voice acting. All I know is it sounds like Indiana Jones. Spot on, like flawlessly. And there's a lot of dialogue in this trailer, so go judge for yourself. But to me, I was like really taken back by that. Even more so than the gameplay stuff they showed off, which, it's first-person game, which is awesome. We saw a whip, clearly, obviously, duh, it's Indiana Jones. I'm assuming whip's going to be a big part of combat and traversing the environment, which they didn't show. I don't think, maybe there's a brief clip of some of that in the trailer. They didn't show a ton of it, but I have a feeling that's going to be a thing. Why wouldn't it be? So the whip, we saw some fists, which makes sense. We saw a couple of shots, actually, of Indy whacking someone with like a frying pan, which also feels very Indiana Jones. And, for the record, because I was getting to start to ask that question in my head, I'm counting the things up. I'm like, okay, we've seen the whip, we've seen the fist, we've seen a couple objects. No guns. One quick shot, briefly, of like an old, again, for the era, because this is classic era Indiana Jones here in the 40s and 50s. We don't know what year it's set in or where it fits in the chronology. I'm sure we'll find out more about that as we get closer to release, which I'll talk about here in a second about the release. But anyway, we saw one quick little shot of Indy firing a gun. So that happened too. I'm assuming it's going to be pretty rare in that game. It's not that Indy has a whole thing against guns. I don't think they ever made that a thing. I'm familiar with all those movies pretty well, and I'm running them through my brain. Yeah, I mean, just gun and Indiana Jones doesn't really fit. Like, that's sort of one of the other things that makes him a fun, cool action hero. is the not like people make fun of Jar Jar Binks for fumbling his way to victory. Indiana Jones created that concept, and again, they borrowed that from old serial, so it's not a new concept either. So, and again, I didn't get this feeling, and I think they probably intentionally kept a lot of the. Again, I'm assuming there's a lot more transversing the environment using the whip that they didn't really show, because I don't think they want to get too many comparisons yet. It's going to happen inevitably no matter what. You don't want to get too many comparisons to Uncharted, which is ironic because our Uncharted would not exist without Indiana Jones. I think the whole concept there, it's coming from someone who's played 0 of the Uncharted games, by the way. I've seen the film, yet to play any of the games. Not for lack of interest, just haven't gotten around to it. I owned one of them at one point. I bought a PS4 bundle that came with, I think, Uncharted 4 or 3, one of them. I don't know, around that era. I owned it. I don't think I ever opened the plastic. I never got around to it. So, yeah, I'm sure the comparisons will be there. I'm sure there'll be some similarities, but whatever. It is what it is. I'm not gonna make a thing of it even, but I'm sure people will, especially once they see more of the game and blah blah blah. I'm sure that will happen. It's like, oh, there's a prof Uncharted, blah blah blah. I'm like, man, do we have to have this conversation again? Like, Uncharted only exists because of Indiana Jones. If there's one franchise and an Indiana Jones game is allowed to borrow from, it's Uncharted, because they borrowed first. So, anyway. That game, we get a title for it, which I don't think we had before this was a title. The Great Circle. So, there's hints of what that even is in the trailer, but again, hints, I have no idea. I'm sure it'll be plenty explained and a good, nice old pointer scene in the game. There's a film reference for you production nerds out there. Pointer scene. Anyway. Yeah, we do have a date on that, sort of. 2024. Which is surprising. I'm hoping I wrote that down right and it's not 2025. Because it seems suspiciously early. We know this game has been in development for a while. They've clearly been sitting on it for a while. What we looked at and we saw in the showcase looks pretty polished and pretty good to go. So maybe that 2024 date's right. I'm just surprised it's not more specific than that. But hey, it's a window. I'm sure at this point, Microsoft's got they wouldn't do this showcase if they didn't already have most of their schedule figured out for the rest of this year and early next year, at least early next year, which is probably what most of the stuff is, with some exceptions, obviously, like Perfect Dark, I'm sure is way off still. But yeah, as far as my notes says here, I would double check that. It does say 2024. So that Indiana Jones game is at most 6 months away, hopefully. And it looks awesome. I cannot wait to play it. I know I don't have a note here about it being on Game Pass. I know Microsoft pretty much... Oh no, Microsoft has the license. See, that's the thing. So I don't think it's considered a first-party thing. So I have to negotiate that whole licensing thing separately. They have it as an exclusive, I'm pretty sure. That's what's a big deal, is that it's not going to be on other platforms. Or platform. The Switch couldn't run this game because it looks nice. Not that Switch games can't look nice. I didn't mean it like that. I thought Tears of the Kingdom was one of the best looking games last year. So it's all about art style, kids, not graphical fidelity. And the execution of that art direction and style within gameplay, it's all one thing. Games don't have to be photorealistic to be pretty. They can just be well designed artistically. Anyway, moving on. Way on. Skip. Okay, yep. We're almost getting finished up here. This wasn't really a new thing at all, unless there wasn't a date announced. I think there already was, because I didn't get it in my initial notes, and before the showcase was over, I was able to find it online. So I think they already announced the date, so it wasn't a big deal. Anyway, we saw more footage from Assassin's Creed Shadows, which I am super interested in. I'm not a huge like into the, well, I'm gonna say fan because I do enjoy the series. I enjoy the games of the franchise I played. I really liked of Assassin's Creed, which would include 1 and 2, and then I took a break, not intentionally. Just there were other games I never got. I missed a lot until I think it was last year or late year before. I finally picked up Assassin's Creed Origins. Because it was on Game Pass, I think. Because they made it. Microsoft eventually made a deal with Ubisoft for some other Ubisoft Plus games to migrate to Game Pass, which included stuff like Assassin's Creed Origins, which I really wanted to play. Even when they announced it, I wanted to play it because again, I'm a huge fan of ancient Egypt, the time period, and the setting, and everything else. Like that's gonna be awesome. And I didn't get to it at launch or anywhere close to that because it was within the last year or year and a half that I played it. But like fully, not 100% because that would be insane because you know how Ubisoft does with their mini maps and bajillion side things. But I did a lot of those side things and all the main story. And I think, no, I not think I know. In that case, when I finished the main game, I actually went out and bought the DLC because again, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that setting a lot. So running around that setting was great. Which is why I'm excited for Assassin's Creed Shadows. Set in I knew this before when they announced it. I was like, oh, it's set in feudal Japan. I am so in for this. Love that time period of history too, in that era. So, and that's no knock on Assassin's Creed Odyssey or Valhalla, both of which I also own and own the expansions for. I just haven't played them that much. I haven't played Valhalla at all yet, and Odyssey I've only gotten like maybe 10% into. And that's been a long time. Long enough that if I went back to the game now, I'd start a fresh character and stuff. So, speaking of Odyssey, though, the thing they showed off in this trailer that I hadn't seen before, not that I looked at a ton of this game. I like to usually go into things kind of in the dark so I can be surprised. But what they did show in this trailer was clearly 2 protagonists. Again, male, female characters. I'm not sure if it's going to be how it was in Odyssey. And I can't even say how it was in Odyssey because I haven't fully finished that game. I don't know if it's the same story with different protagonists or if those both protagonists exist in the world and their stories cross over. It looks like with Shadows, it's definitely the latter of those 2 things. That both protagonists, whether or not you choose one at the start or you go between them, I don't know yet. I don't think that's been revealed. But the cool thing is it looks like that male protagonist is going to have a completely different combat style for an Assassin's Creed game, because he is a full-blown, fully armored shogun samurai. So his combat style looks much more like what I quoted in my notes. There's heavy combat because that's what it is. Because again, fully armored shogun, more samurai shogun. Yeah, that's again. Whereas I think your female protagonist character you play as is more the ninja school of art, if you will. More on the stealth, whereas the Shogun Warrior is just more brute force. So, gonna be very interested to see how that works. I would love it, and this is just speculation on my part of what they could do with that, which would really be something that we haven't seen in those games before yet. Sorry, I was getting a weird lighting effect, but it was just nothing. Something we haven't seen in those games before, which would be amazingly interesting, is if you were able to swap between those 2 characters, 2 protagonists on the fly. And if you had to do that for certain missions, like you would have it'd be a combination of like swapping them to put them in position or take control, but also probably giving them some very basic AI commands like follow, go and attack here, and a stealth. Like there'd have to be a whole system there to do it with, and I don't know if they're there yet. They might get there in the future. I don't know how well that would even work. It's just an idea. Thought of it just now. I was like, that would be interesting too if you have like having infiltrate a compound, but with 2 different characters. That opens up the possibility for co-op play. Like there's a whole world. So we'll see. Maybe they're hinting at that's where they want to go in the future with stuff. But for now, we get what we get. Don't really care. I know, did they put a date? Oh yeah, that's the date being November 15th. Release date for Assassin's Creed Shadows, which I'll definitely be into. I don't know if I'm going to play it at launch, because even though I know they're not really connected per se, they are and they aren't. I won't go into why that is, that answer, but part of me feels some little bit of obligation just as a gamer, and not a completionist gamer, but semi in my brain. I feel like I want to finish playing the rest of Odyssey and Valhalla before I get into Shadows, because I do feel this is, and I've heard this from a lot of people within the industry or the press and whatnot, that yeah, Assassin's Creed Origins was kind of this turning point for the franchise in terms of getting it back like on its feet, going in the right direction. Because for a while there'd been a lot of negative press with that franchise that I wasn't playing, and that negative press wasn't helping me want to come back. What won me over to get me to come back was, again, they set a game in ancient Egypt, and I'm like, I am so down for that. So, same with Assassin's Creed Shadows. Like, had the other game not existed, again, I don't mean to skip over Odyssey and Valhalla. I like those time periods too, especially Odyssey, the Greco-Roman era. I've studied a lot of, so I know I'm gonna enjoy that. I know a little bit less in the Norse stuff when it comes to Valhalla, but I think it'll still be pretty fun. I've heard a lot of good things from friends of mine I know that don't even like those games per se. Were big fans of Valhalla and recommended it to me. So, you know, as I don't know if I mentioned earlier the Metal Gear Solid 3 thing, I'm a huge Metal Gear Solid fan. So obviously I like stealth games. So yeah, Assassin's Creed is right up my alley because you can do both, and they've evolved to a point where if you want to, you can pretty much just play it like a pure action game and forget the stealth part, which sometimes I do. It depends on my mood, but I like having that freedom. And technically, you can also do that in Metal Gear. It just makes things a lot harder. Yes, depending on your definition, if it's hard to sneak and be stealthy or hard combat, it depends, but whatever. To each of their own on that one. Anyway, after the Assassin's Creed trailer, there was a Stalker 2 trailer, which has coming out September 5th. I think it's in beta right now. I only mention that because it's a game I don't care about. I didn't play the original. Don't really care about this one. Doesn't really seem up my alley from what I know about it. I know a little bit about the first one. I've seen. I think I've seen some gameplay on a Let's Play, people doing the original Stalker game, and just didn't really appeal to me. But anyway, I only mentioned that because afterward they started talking about the new models of Xboxes, which we've kind of known about. Some of those were leaked. This just confirms some of those leaks and rumors. The only one I bothered to write down, because the only one I would care about, because the only thing that would really be an upgrade for me, is the new 2 terabyte solid state drive Series X. Yeah, there's a new Series X model with a 2 terabyte SSD in it. But I'm pretty sure unless they make that cheaper than the cost of just adding the expansion card, which, you can get converter ports for and use pretty much any external drive that you want if you get the converter port, because it's a proprietary thing with Seagate for the expansion on that. And the expansion drive for that's pretty pricey, and I don't know what sizes it is. I'll have to look into that more. Either way, it's going to be hard to justify doubling the storage space for the cost of a brand new console. Now, if Microsoft had like a cool trade-in program, that'd be nice. Those things don't exist anymore. Some stuff like that used to exist in the long decades I've been gaming. There were things that like that I don't think they were through the companies. I think they were through retailers, probably. So hey, maybe some retailers, GameStop, looking at you because you're like the only one left, can step up and do something. Well, not really. Best Buy's still around too. In terms of brick and mortar retailers, I'm talking. Obviously, Amazon's a thing. I know what year it is, usually. Anyway, I mentioned those two things there because I'm like, as they're talking about these new model Xboxes, it kind of feels like they're wrapping the show up. And my thought is like, like I mentioned a long time ago, you want to start strong and finish strong. And I'm like, Stalker 2 doesn't really seem like a big, strong finish to the showcase. Like, even the trailer, like, you weren't pushing it that hard. So I was like, well, that's a weird choice. And of course, like, oh, and we've got one last thing for you. I'm like, okay, here we go. And I get pretty excited because no, this could be anything. Again, you start strong, finish strong. Since they open with Black Ops, you know, weren't going to close with it, which is kind of what I was expecting going into the show. So, although clearly, I mean, it makes sense to do either way around. There's no wrong way to do this. Well, actually, there is, but that's a different story. Anyway, I'm thinking what you're probably thinking, the initial Xbox One reveal. Yeah, that's how not to do one of these showcases. Anyway, our final announcement from the showcase, which is something that I think everyone who saw it probably called it early, sort of, and then got it half right, half wrong. And I'll talk about that. Because the next trailer they showed, which I think was all cinematics, didn't really matter. It was more of an announcement trailer. And it was immediately recognizable to anyone that's played any of the franchise over all the years. New Gears of War. So, yeah. And the twist on that I think surprised people, myself included, was that this is not Gears of War 6. It's been known, I think, pretty publicly, at least within gaming industry circle and talk, that the coalition, the developers of the last several Gears of War games, were only going to do one more game, and then they were done with the franchise, and Microsoft was going to hand it off to some new developer. And we all assumed that was going to be Gears of War 6. We know something's been in development with them for a while, since they finished Gears of War 5. We all assumed it was 6. There's certainly room in the story for another game. I'm not going to go into why that is. I know within the last couple of years, me and a couple of friends of mine played through all of them. Again, I'd only play up to 3, or up to part of 3. I didn't play anything beyond that, so it was nice for me. I don't like to go through the old games again, but, get to the newer stuff. And we did play the remake of Gears 1, which I already played previously when they re-released it, because I loved that first game a lot. A lot of affection, a lot of good memories for it. One of my rarest / proudest achievements in gaming is I do have that seriously achievement, which is 10,000 ranked kills in multiplayer, which took me months. Look at my gamer tag and my history. Go all the way back and find Gears of War, and look at all the dates and the achievements, and look at the time span between the last achievement and when I finally got the seriously achievement. That wasn't constant grinding. I played for like a couple hours a day just to work on it over time, and yeah, it took months. And I know they only made, like, when Gears 2 came out, they made it seriously 2.0, and it was like 100,000 ranked kills. I'm like, nope, not doing it. And I know they've only made it more ridiculous every single game release, so hey, props to them and props to the hardcore players that are willing to go and grind for that achievement in each game. I salute you and all of the time you've had to spend doing that, because boy, is it time consuming. Anyway, sorry for the tangent. This is not Gears of War 6. This is Gears of War E-Day, which, if you know what the franchise is, this is a prequel. This is the prequel, because E-Day stands for Emergence Day, which is when I want to say they're called the Hive, but I know that's not right. My head's just still in Destiny Land. Crap. Lambent? That's one type of them, I think. It's something along those lines, though. Sorry, there's way too much, like, nerdy, dorky. There's too much stuff in my brain. Too many universes and too much lore of too many places to get all of it straight and remember half the time. Anyway, yeah. No, it is... So that's going to be fun. Because even in the original Gears of War, there's a lot of backstory reference we don't see. We might get some of that talked about. Like how... I think there were books that covered some of it. Because back in the earlier days of Microsoft being in the console and the gaming space, more so than they were on PC before the Xbox, at least. Like, But within the Xbox era, early on, both Xbox and Xbox 360, Microsoft was real big on taking their big franchises, aka Halo and Gears of War, and expanding out the universes with books. Heck, they even did a book for Crimson Skies. I know that because it was written by Eric Nyland, who also wrote some of the early Halo books, because he was just like a writer for Microsoft Game Studios internally that they tapped to write books. So it's like, sure. And he did some great work on Halo. I don't know if he worked on any of the Gears of War stuff, though. I know Karen Traviss, I think, did quite a bit of the Gears books. So always enjoyed Karen Traviss' writing for the Halo stuff. Most of it. The exception of one book I won't talk about right now. That's a whole other video. This one's already been way too long. Taking almost as long as the entire event to cover the event. I got on very many tangents. But... oh, the little note I have written down, which I thought was a nice touch. Music touch. Near the end of the Gears of War trailer, as they're looking out upon the city, as all the stuff is starting to go nuts, they have an instrumental cover score. There's no vocals, just the instrumental part of Mad World, the Gary Jules version that they used for all the original marketing for the original Gears of War. So yeah, nice tie in there. But again, just small little music cue. Just some instrumentals of Mad World at the very end of the trailer that start to come in for the last, like, maybe 10 seconds. It's a really nice touch to bring it all full circle back to the original game, which I'm assuming this is probably going to lead close to or bleed. Well, no, there's actually, I think, a bit of a time gap. Yeah, because Marcus got... again, we'll find out stuff. I haven't read any of the books. I know this will probably override, even though the Gears books never really continued on. They didn't have the same success the Halo books did, franchise-wise. Like, they're still making Halo books. I just bought a new one recently I got to read and review for the channel for this. So, I'm actually behind on a couple Halo books I got to read, but I just got one of many new ones I need to catch up on. So, anyway, with all that said, that was the Xbox Showcase. And even though I skipped a bunch of stuff in my notes to save time, we still ended up over an hour and a half. It's funny, because I thought my video reviewing Final Shape and going through that, talking about that, was going to take a long time. Because I knew that could go off on tangents about my on and off relationship with Destiny. I thought that'd be a long video. Wasn't expecting this to be the long video, but it was. So there you go. And now I gotta stop, take another break, and record another video. And it's going to be a long day of a lot of uploads. This is already in your records. I can't wait to see what the upload time on this one's going to be. Boy. And I'm glad I actually lowered some of the settings so it would go a little faster. But anyway, I'm going to shut up now, because the longer I talk, the longer it's going to cost me later watching this. Not the video playback, just the bar on YouTube percentage filling up with time. Anyway, I'm out. That was a showcase. Overall, like 2 thumbs up for me. A lot of cool stuff. I think as someone who's not a big part yet, because I don't think anyone in the Halo community really knows who I am. As a massive lifelong Halo fan, yes, I know there's always part of the Halo community. Literally every time there's any kind of Microsoft we're going to announce anything, there's always a section, depends on what size that section is, of the Halo community, always expecting some Halo-related announcement, and they get mad when they don't get it. I wasn't expecting anything at this showcase for Halo. I really wasn't. That would have shocked me even more than the Perfect Dark thing. This didn't really surprise me. I was like, oh, finally. Thought it was more the reaction. So, no. Not surprised there. I think the current state, again, there's a lot of chatter and a lot of rumors and speculation, even at the moment, about what's going on with the Halo franchise. I'm not going to dip into that, at least not right now. If I do, it'll be later when we get something more solid and then I have something to talk about that's not just sort of clickbait, cannon fodder, or internet speculation. which I feel like we're a lot of now. There is some more stuff, but again, I'm getting off topic here. Just saying, there was no Halo at the showcase. I'm totally fine with. I think there's a lot of other great stuff. I mean, enough that I spent an hour and 40 minutes talking about all of the great stuff that I saw that I'm excited for coming out either later this year or sometime next year. Or in the case of Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta, possibly, we don't know. Although I bet 2025 on that one. Konami's not committed to saying that yet. So, and that's fine. That's totally their right. So, but looking forward to whenever we get to play that game. I cannot wait for all of those, all the things. Anyway, all right, I'm out. Peace.